In high school, nearly every one of us had that one special teacher who educated, entertained, and inspired. For many students at Riverdale High, that person was Mark Schwiebes. The execution-style murder of the kind and generous music instructor left the community of Fort Myers, Florida, struggling with one haunting question. Why? I'm Brian Dennehy, and this is Arrest and Trial.
Lee County Sheriff Sergeant Dean Tabor and Sergeant Gil Allen were dispatched to the scene to assist in the investigation.
It was late in the evening, and I received a call that we had a shooting. When we arrived, the victim was lying just inside and half out of the doorway where he fell.
Mr. Schwiebes, he had been shot once in the face with a shotgun at close range, and once in the buttocks with a shotgun. We entered the apartment, we looked around to try to determine what type, if it had been a robbery or what had occurred. There was no indication of any type of a robbery at that point, so at that point we didn't know what the motive was for him being killed.
Anytime you have a wound to the genital areas that leads you to believe that there's more involved in this than a straight-up robbery type victim. So we can assume by that I may have known the assailant.
Two spent 3-inch shotgun shells recovered outside the doorway and pellet holes in the interior wall confirmed investigators' initial suspicions on how Mark Schwiebes died. But they still had no motive.
Well, the next step is I get my investigators together and we give them specific instructions to start a neighborhood canvass. Knock on all the doors in the area, talk to all the people to find out exactly what they heard, the times they heard it, to try to start a timeline.
During that canvass, we located several witnesses that had heard shots. Some witnesses had seen some boys running from the scene, and witnesses that described a vehicle.
What happens next during an investigation like this, we immediately put it out to the media as much as we can, hoping for the public to call us with leads.
Last night, 32-year-old Mark Schwiebes was brutally murdered in the doorway of his Pine Manor home. Lee County homicide detectives have no leads as to why anyone would want the Riverdale High School band instructor dead. Police are asking the public for help.
Lieutenant Allen, homicide.
I received a phone call from a young lady who said that she had direct information regarding Mr. Schwiebes' death. And to qualify her, I asked her a couple of questions, and she gave me the appropriate answers. And she gave me information that she knew one of the perpetrators.
About 10 minutes.
The girl agreed to meet detectives at a park near her house.
Thanks a lot for talking to me. Thanks for calling.
This young lady went into detail about, it wasn't a boyfriend, but an individual that wanted to be a boyfriend of hers, that was trying to impress her, telling her about killing Mr. Schwiebes.
Craig Lesh. But he wasn't the only one involved. There's a group.
According to the young woman, Craig Lesh was just one of several local teenagers who had committed the crime.
They were all there.
Craig? We have some questions for you.
Please put your wrench down over here, sir, where I can see it.
I didn't do anything.
Put it down right now.
We found out that Mr. Lesh worked at an auto mechanics place close by. Myself, Lieutenant Allen, Sergeant Tabor all went to this location and immediately took him into custody and brought him to the sheriff's office.
You know you're in here for murder, don't you? Yes.
He was very concerned at this point because he knew he was involved now in a possible murder. He started telling us that he himself had not committed the crime, nor was he there, but these boys that had committed it had told him about it.
They're like a gang, but...
After providing detectives with a solid alibi, Lesh gave them the names of 5 teenagers who he claimed were responsible for the murder.
They call themselves the Lords of Chaos.
During the interview with Mr. Lesh, he gave us the members of this group: Chris Burnett, Derek Shills, Christopher Black, Kevin Foster, and Peter McNaughty.
According to Lesh, Kevin Foster had formed the Lords of Chaos only 3 weeks earlier. The group created a manifesto, designed a logo, and set out to make a reputation for themselves.
We torched a couple places.
Mr. Lesh gave us information about some arsons and robberies that had happened in the course of about a 3 or 4 week period. They had committed an assortment of crimes ranging from auto thefts and burning cars and trashing them, is what they called it. There was a victim of a carjacking. There was a church that they attempted to burn. They tried to burn tractor trailers.
Frustrated with the lack of response from the media, the Lords of Chaos set their sights on a target that everyone would notice: a historic building in downtown Fort Myers.
They stole propane tanks from a local convenience store, took the tanks and distributed them around the building, opened them up, made a little timing device, and went across the street and waited.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And it was a very intense fire to a very historic building. It really hurt the community to lose it.
Is there anything else you want to tell us? Is there anything you know that they're planning to do?
Yeah, there's more.
Mr. Lesh explained to us that these young boys planned to do a robbery at a hamburger stand, and that several of them actually worked there, and it was set up so there wasn't like an inside job, and that they were planning on possibly killing somebody if they got in the way.
Lesh told us it was supposed to happen sometime that night, and he was to be in the restaurant itself to witness this because he wanted to be a member of this gang.
Acting on information from Lesh, detectives set up surveillance at Kevin Foster's house.
We had put several officers watching the location for the simple fact, if they're going to go commit a robbery, we want to stop it before it happens or somebody else gets hurt.
They're moving. All right, they're on the move.
When they began to move, they split up. We had like 30, 40 officers out on the streets in this general area, and we were able to follow them.
At what we considered the best time, we initiated a traffic stop on a truck that was driven by Chris Burnett, and also in that truck was Kevin Foster.
Everyone in the car, get your hands up! Get your hands in the air, face away from me!
We immediately searched the inside of the car and found a .45 automatic in the car. At the time that we were doing the traffic stop on Burnett and Kevin Foster, I had other officers making the traffic stop on Peter McNaughty's vehicle, which had Chris Black in that vehicle.
I need you to walk back to the sound of my voice.
A search of the car's trunk provided detectives with the first solid evidence linking the Lords of Chaos to Mark Schwebe's murder.
When we recovered the shotgun, ballistically, the casings at the scene and the shotgun matched. The only fingerprints on that shotgun that we found were Kevin Foster's.
Once all of the suspects were in custody, they were interrogated at the Lee County Sheriff's Station.
We had a room full of young men to interview. We had them in different rooms. The first one that we had interviewed, I interviewed Chris Burnett. He was very forthcoming. His involvement was not with the murder. He was involved with the earlier crimes. My second interview was with Peter McNaughty, and Peter was strange.
I wish I was the one who pulled the trigger.
He seemed to dwell on death, on mutilation of bodies, suicide, all this type of thing.
When I interviewed Chris Black, he had no remorse. He smiled and kind of giggled through the whole thing.
So you think it's funny? Well.
He was very, very eerie.
Next up was Derek Shields, who also confessed to the crimes.
You're asking me if I committed a crime? The answer is yes.
This was a group of kids, kind of the outcast. I think they got their identity from the group, and Kevin was their leader. Kevin named himself God, and they referred to him as God. We knew that Kevin was the trigger man, and he was to be the last one interviewed.
I just want to give you your chance to tell your side of the story.
There ain't no side of the story.
He realized that this was getting very serious very quickly, and he elected not to talk to me any further.
And I want a lawyer.
I've seen mutilated bodies, I've seen murders, I've seen it all. But to hear it from teenagers that were so cold and calloused and didn't care. They had no care, you know, about the families, about the victims. It scared me.
What had caused 5 seemingly normal teenage boys to suddenly erupt into a bloody gang of vandals and murderers? The Lords of Chaos may have been stopped, but their story was far from over.
The twisted fantasies of the Lords of Chaos ended in murder. Now they would face the cold reality of justice. While 3 members pled guilty to their roles in the shotgun killing of Mark Schwiebes, their leader, Kevin Foster, remained defiant.
The responsibility of prosecuting Kevin Foster was handed down to Randall McRuther, a 21-year veteran of the Lee County State Attorney's Office.
This one was extremely difficult because of the age of the individuals who committed this crime and with the callousness that they did it with.
The prosecution began their case against Kevin Foster with the physical evidence.
The weapon was found in the trunk.
One important piece of evidence that we had was the shotgun that was recovered from Derek Shields' automobile trunk. It had Kevin Foster's fingerprints on it.
We took it in for forensics. We found that it was in fact the weapon that was used.
Other than the shotgun, the prosecution had little else linking Kevin Foster to the murder. They were forced to turn to the Lords of Chaos for help.
Well, we were going to trash the school. It was part of our plan.
According to the witnesses, the night began with a trip to Riverdale High School.
And they were going out there that night to do some vandalism. They were going to break some windows, and then the idea was formed that they would try to set the gymnasium on fire. They were stopped by Mark Schwiebes.
What are you boys doing? What's going on here? Isn't it past your bedtime?
And he inquired of what they were doing and told them that they could expect a call from the school resource officer in the morning. The Lords of Chaos then gathered across the street and were very angry that they had been stopped. They were also very concerned at that point that if the school resource officer started talking to the group, as Kevin Foster put it, the weaker members of the group would tell what's been going on.
We gotta take care of this. We gotta take care of this tonight. What do you mean? We gotta kill him.
The motive for the killing of Mark Schwiebes was the protection of the group and to keep the group from being discovered in their criminal acts.
Whose idea was it to kill Mr. Schwiebes?
I think it was like Chris Black, but so much was going on. Kevin thought it would be a really good idea.
They took Derek Shields' automobile. Derek Shields was ordered to go, and Derek Shields went to the door, knocked on the door, and when the door was open, Kevin Foster reached around the corner with a shotgun and fired a blast into his face.
Kevin did it for the Lords of Chaos. He did it for us.
Kevin Foster's attorney countered with a powerful alibi defense. Several of Kevin's family members testified that he was with them on the night of the murder.
Please tell the court where Kevin
Foster has maintained since the time of his arrest that he had nothing to do with the murder. His mother and his sister also testified that he was home that night.
We watched television all night.
Thank you. No further questions.
After a 7-day trial, the jury retired to deliberate. For the leader of the Lords of Chaos, who called himself God, Judgment Day was at hand. After careful deliberation, the jury in the Kevin Foster murder trial returned with its verdict. Kevin Foster was found guilty of the murder of Mark Schwiebes and was sentenced to death.
People want to know why this happened, but I don't have an answer for them. People want to blame things on broken homes. You don't have that here. People want to blame it on video games or movies. I believe that would be an oversimplification. I really don't know what the answer is.
Peter Magnotti pled guilty to conspiracy to commit murder and was sentenced to 32 years in prison. Christopher Black and Derek Shields both pled guilty to first-degree murder and received life sentences. Kevin Foster is currently awaiting execution at a Florida state prison.
2 years after his conviction, Kevin Foster and his mother Ruby were charged with conspiring to murder 3 witnesses who had testified against Kevin. Their trial on these charges is still pending.